I know a lot of you guys have been kind of watching this whole build from the beginning of the engine swap to the completion of the turbo installation. It was designed as a budget build from start to finish. The engine swap and the turbo install, everything was budget. That was the plan. Do it as cheap as possible and show you guys how to do it, what I did, basically. Instead of going through the whole list of everything and then telling you how much it costs, let's just do that and get that right out of the way. I got a list. We'll go through the list. We'll talk about it, but the exciting part is what it costs. What I have right now, my total cost for the whole turbo installation was about $736. Plus or minus maybe like $20, something like that. Most of the stuff I bought on eBay, that's where I usually get stuff from. And I'll take you through step by step where I got everything, how I did it. I'll put links in the description for every single thing that I bought. I will also say that my total cost for the entire engine swap, transmission swap, everything else was about $850. I have another video on that. I'll put that in the description also. There were some things that I did that you may not have to do. The low end of the spectrum for this whole cost deal is about $1,344. We'll call it $1,400 just to round up. That's including pulling the engine on transmission out of the truck, buying the new engine, transmission, drive shaft, everything from the time I pulled the engine out of the truck to the time I got the turbo running and driving around, making choo-choo noises and stuff. About $1,400. A 6-liter LQ4, 4L80 transmission, full turbo setup, running and driving, good to go. $1,400. So now let's go through everything and I'll show you piece by piece what I bought, how much it cost, screenshots of everything, link in the description. Let's check it out. The first thing we're gonna talk about is exhaust manifolds and all of the hot side pipe. I have a welder, so I did all the welding and basically just used the stock truck manifolds, which is pretty common in these type of swaps. Passenger side, I flipped it upside down, did like a log, they call it. What I did was I split a 2.5-inch pipe. I cut the top of the exhaust manifold off on this section, split the pipe over here and welded it over the top to come over to the hot side. So the manifolds, exhaust manifolds, that didn't really cost me anything, and I already had the 2.5-inch pipe in the garage, so that didn't cost me anything either. I had the 2.5-inch pipe from when I did the swap, because I ran the swap without the turbo setup for, I don't know, maybe a month or something like that before I started to do the turbo. So I already had the exhaust piping, I already had the V-bands and everything because of how I hooked up the mufflers, and that's factored into the cost for the engine swap. This wastegate, this was a 44mm wastegate, came with the V-bands and everything else just like this. The wastegate cost $51.97. This downpipe here, this was $5. Got this at Fleet Farm. This thing was $5. The downpipe, this is just a 4-inch downpipe, pie cut it. This is a 4-inch, 4-foot long section. This was $28.98. This V-band for the turbo, this is a DNA Motoring GT45 Turbo. So the GT45 Turbo from DNA Motoring, that was $198. The V-band was about $29. Have to get the DNA Motoring GT45 Turbo V-band for the turbo. I made the mistake of buying like a regular 3.5-inch V-band. I believe it was 3.5. And I'm actually doing a giveaway on that right now because I bought the wrong stuff. Don't make the same mistake I did and buy the wrong thing. $29, get the right V-band. So I already said this turbo was $198. Forget the exact length on it, but this is a -4 AN fitting on both sides. This was $17. The feed fitting here, I bought this separately. This was about $4 or $5. And on the back side of this oil feed line, the source is coming from where the oil pressure sending unit was. So basically what I did was disconnect the oil sending unit. It's a M16 by 1.5 to a -4 AN fitting that hooks right up to the -4 line that I got going to the feed. So I disconnected the oil pressure sending unit. Oil pressure isn't required for the engine to run. The computer does monitor it, but it doesn't really control anything that prevents it from running. It doesn't need it at all. Basically what's working, my understanding of it is how it works in the computer. It sends, the PCM sends a signal to the BCM, which sends it to the gauge. So it's not really a function that's gonna hurt anything. So I disconnected that and then just ran that fitting right from there to the turbo. So there are some adapter fittings where you can run that with the gauge, but the fitting that I got was like $4. So that's what I'm doing right now. If I decide later on down the road that I want to log fuel pressure, I can do that, but I didn't for this. Also had to get the bottom side fitting for the drain. This was about another $4 or $5 here. This guy right here, I ended up buying the fitting separately from the hose. So the hose was $17 and the drain flange was $4.88. So I also had to get a weld-in aluminum bung that I welded in, just decided to weld it in. You could go to the hardware store and get like an NPT fitting, drill a hole and screw it back in. It'd be like $2. I ended up deciding to get an aluminum fitting because I wanted to weld it into the pan because whatever, I wanted to do it. That thing was $5.75. I also got this T4 flange that welded onto the pipe. This was $14.49, and that was just like a flange by itself and had to weld it on. So all of the intercooler piping, this pipe, this coupler, the bands, everything comes down around over here, back over this side, came with all of the couplers, all of the fittings and everything I needed. That kit was $79. So that kit is a pretty big kit. I used not very much of the pipe. There's a lot of it left, a lot of extra bands and stuff like that. That was 79 bucks. So intercooler, this guy right here, it's like a 31 by 3 inch by 29 high or something like that. I forget the exact dimensions. That thing was $72.19. So all of the intercooler piping, the 3-inch piping and the intercooler was around 150 bucks for all of that stuff. So this coupler here, this is a 4-inch to a 3-inch. This thing was $7.63. I also got this coupler separately. This is a 45. It's like a 3.75 inch to 3 inch, and it comes down at a 45. That thing was 11 bucks. Map sensor, I changed it from a 1-bar to a 2-bar operating system. So I got a 2-bar map sensor. 2-bar map sensor just goes in the stock location there. Next, I had to get a little bit of a little fitting here. It's like a -4 to a 3/8 inch hose barb. That thing was like $7, something like that. Picked up a couple hose clamps. Those are pretty cheap, so I probably spent like maybe $5 or $10 on those. I don't remember the exact price, but those are pretty cheap. This hose down here brings us down underneath the truck. So we got a bunch of this hose. This was about $20 for all of this hose. A couple more hose clamps. Do have the fuel pump right here. This thing was $24. It did not come with the in-feed or out-feed fitting. One fitting was $11 and one was like $16 or something like that. I will show the price. Did have this filter and regulator. This was $45. And I was able to reuse, I got some 8-gauge wiring that I reused. That was free, didn't cost me anything. So for the fittings, that is just a replica like Bosch 044 pump. It's just a generic pump. You can buy a kit that has the fittings, or you can buy the pump with the fittings with it. I made the mistake of not getting a kit with the fittings and tried to buy them separately, and it was a big mess because I had to wait like a month because both of the fittings got sent to the wrong place. One got sent to the wrong house, and one didn't even get sent and didn't even show up. So I had to get another one sent and wasted a lot of time waiting for that thing. So fuel injectors. One thing I didn't cover because it didn't cost me really anything. Decapped fuel injectors. I just decapped the injectors. I did have to buy a different set of injectors. If you want to add on another 20 bucks for the injectors or whatever, go for it. A couple other things that I did do was spark plugs. Got a new set of spark plugs, NGK TR6 spark plugs. Those are in the truck right now. And I did pick up these little goobers. These go over the spark plug wires, and I just put them on the passenger side because of how close it is to the wiring. You may not have to do this, but with the manifold flipped upside down, I just for a little extra comfort, I got these things just to flip them on this side because the wiring is pretty close to the manifold. I didn't include these in the cost, like this total that we're talking about right now, but I think these things are like $8 or something like that. So yeah guys, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I think that covers just about everything. If you got any questions, feel free to ask, leave a comment. I usually try to respond to the questions. Total cost about $1,400 if you do it on the low end. My cost was right around $1,600, and that's including the engine and the transmission swap. Just the turbo setup alone. So if you already have a setup like this and you wanted to do it, it's easy to do it for like $700 or $800. which is really cheap. There's other people that are doing it even cheaper than that. Another channel, Bad Luck Garage, he did his whole setup for right around $600 because he was able to find a used turbo and some piping and stuff like that. So that really drives the cost down because he was able to find some things used and stuff that he was comfortable using. It worked for him and he was able to do it even cheaper than this. So this is like basically buying pretty much all newer stuff, and you don't have to do it like that, so you can do it really, really cheap. Hopefully you guys like this. Let me know if you got any questions. Feel free to subscribe. Have a good one.